And Gatsby and I am back for our final video in the rust removal project. I have the remainder of the left side of the vehicle to do. So as usual, I start by squatting down on the ground like a 325-pound 6-year-old. Grope the vehicle a little bit, and then I start to cut. And I cut, and I cut, and I cut. And I do a bit of wire brushing just to shake things up a little bit. After a bit of that, I do some more cutting. That was a surprise. Cut really carefully because right behind where I'm cutting is the sewage tank, and I definitely don't want to put a hole in that. After that, I get my freak on and stare and grope the undercarriage, if you know what I mean. Taking a look at how much space there is for me to put a piece of metal up in there, I decided I wanted to try to leave the screws that are in already, so I decided to cut slots out for the screws so I could slide this piece of metal up and leave the screws in. But I discovered that when I measured where to put them, I didn't have the piece of metal the bent piece of metal in the right place, and so all my screws are an inch to the side. Yeah, that was pretty demoralizing. So I decided instead that I would just cut the screws off, take them out eventually, and then I would move on. That wasn't my only problem though. There's a piece of metal up in there that was bent and in the way, and cutting metal out up there is the hardest part. Alright, there's a bunch of shit right here. Now this is connected on the inside, so I don't want to cut any more of this off. So I'm going to try to cut out a section to fit around that, and then I'll weld it to it as part of my plans to secure this. It's going to take a while, so I'm not going to film it. I did eventually get that piece up in there, and so now I am making another mistake where I thought rather than take that piece of metal back to generator and bend the lip in a little bit, I thought that I would just weld this diagonal piece to it, and then I could hammer it in and bend it in, and that would work just great. It didn't, but my spot welding was much better this time. I ended up doing like 3 welds per spot, and that worked great. But the problem here is the pressure on the metal was so great that it kind of started pulling the curtain piece out again, and I didn't trust the individual welds, spot welds, so I ended up just doing a bead along all the way along the bottom. You can see it sticking out, but that's okay. When I put the skirt on it, you won't, or the fender on it, you won't notice it. Here I'm gasping for breath, just checking my spot welds. All right, this should be interesting. I've got a crack. Let's see if I can find a good place to put it. Got a crack on the trim, so I'm going to use the plastic welding tool, which is essentially a soldering iron, to see if I can melt the pieces back together. I think this is plastic and not fiberglass, so we'll find out in a minute if it is or if it isn't. Seems
Seems like there's a lot of tension on this part right here. I'm going to try to push plastic from the sides into the middle where the crack is. The last plastic filler that I used ended up just melting it away and turning black. Whoops. Put this back up here where maybe you can see it. All right, let me turn it over. See if I can get it in a position where you can see it. This plastic filler is behaving. When I made when I was working on the broken plastic interior trim on the RV, I ended up using, I don't think I had ordered this plastic filler yet. I ended up using Diet Coke bottle caps that I had melted down. There. Yeah. Well. That was for you, Tim. That there. Now it's time to go try it out. Alright, it's cool to the touch, and it is surviving me putting some pressure on it, so that's a good sign. Yep, all I need to do now is just drill a hole, put a screw in it.
Moving on back to the rust repairer, I only had small holes here, so rather than cut, the whole piece out, I decided to try to just do a repair by putting in a patch of metal as practice for eventually trying to work on a car. I tried a couple of different ways to do this. On the larger piece, you'll see that I try to butt weld it in flush and then grind it to see if I could get it smooth.
All right, I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity to try welding some sheet metal. 22 gauge, just like you would find on a car. Give me a chance to see if I can weld it and then grind it at least up in this upper part so that it blends pretty good.
On this one, rather than super speed the way through it, I just left it at normal speed. I found immediately that I was getting burned through when I was trying to create the stitches. I think the big problem with that was I didn't have the voltage high enough and I was welding too long. You can see the burn through right there. Also, the fan is blowing sideways across me to keep me cool, but I think it was blowing the gas away, and that ended up causing some of the problem. But I did eventually adjust the welder and get it sorted out so that it ended up welding more cleanly. Not great, but it actually, came together. By the end of this whole project, I actually had the welder dialed in, and I was doing like really good spot welds, really good stitch welds. I've only been doing this for 4 months, just about every single day. Right there, I was stitching across, and it was finally working. So I feel a lot more confident now that I could probably start to do, a bit of welding on a car. I'd have to really watch how they manage the weld so that when, after grinding it, it wouldn't be bumping out if I had to, so I could use some filler to smooth it out and then paint it. But I definitely learned a lot about stitch welding and spot welding really thin steel. I think I was also going a little too fast because it ended up warping the metal on the side a little bit, which I point out after I'm done grinding it down. Could have gone slower and much shorter welds. Right here, I'm just trying to grind it down smooth to paint it. I also discovered that I was grinding too hard and putting too much heat into the metal while grinding, so another thing that I'd have to not do later.
There's some warpage here now. I wonder if that's due to what I did or if that was already there. I forget. Like, I've got two little holes right there that I want to try to repair, but I know if I do, it's just going to burn them through, so I'm going to leave them. I don't even know if I recorded that. Let me record that again, just in case. This part here is the part that I welded, spot welded, then ground. I can feel the bump. This part here came really good. If this was a car, I would be tapping probably that bit of metal in and then putting Bondo on it. This part over here I didn't even try. So, not bad, good practice. And that's the next patch to do.
And guess what that means? Yes, more cutting. Cutting, grinding, cutting. I wish I had kept a pile of all the cut off rust. Right below where I'm grinding off, the strap for the water tank was rusted off, so I ended up replacing that as well. Here I'm going to size the metal, and I'm going to flange around it, and I'm just going to weld it over the hole rather than trying to make it fit. This flanging tool really, it was so cheap, and I really got a lot of good use out of it for doing these quick and dirty repairs. Nice and easy. So I tacked it in, and now I'm just grinding out the spots. Again, I went across and I welded each spot 3 times. I just do a quick little tap and then all the way around on each one, and then I'd go around again in a different place, like 120 degrees, and then around again and cover over the hole. And that made really solid welds. I didn't have any pop off while grinding or hammering. Here you can see the bottom spot welds. You see the pitting? That was again because I had the fan blowing across the gas, blew the gas away.
All right, so these bottom ones, they look like something was happening. I think maybe the fan that's blowing across me was blowing the gas away on those. So I'm going to turn the fan a little bit, and then I'm going to put a few more on those before I just move on to the next part. I am down to my last bit of rust on the body. I've got the rest of it all fixed, panels reattached. This one, the only tricky part of it is that I have to weld a couple of bolts to it to attach the step, the running board. And then I just got to make a strap to go under the water tank. And that's it. That's all she wrote.
I bet you can't guess what I'm going to do here. What? Paint a self-portrait? No, I'm going to cut the rust off. I also tried measuring spots to locate the 2 bolts that I was going to have to put in. That kind of worked. It didn't work out as well though, because as usual, when I try to measure stuff, I always seem to mess it up. I guess I go too quickly. But that there is the piece that I'm going to cut out, and also the piece that I should replace it. Now you're going to see later with the piece I put in, I completely messed up uh, measuring the other piece. Here I am just double checking each measurement so that I can try to locate where to do it. But for some reason, I just could not get the measurements right. I have no idea why. It was a pain in the butt, but it was bigger instead of smaller, so all I had to do was just cut it off flat. That weld up top is stitch welds. It actually is, I think, some of my best welding. It doesn't look great. It's not a stack of dimes, but that's because it's individual spots. And right there, I'm now about to say that I have to put my bolts in, which I mismeasured and had to move them to the side. But that was it. And my rust repair is done, and now it's time to move on to the inside.